I'm sure. Councillors, welcome. 15th of November council meeting here in the chambers. We'll stand for the karakia and oath. Whakatakata te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taotara ki tai, ihi aki ana te akura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihe moriora. Let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions, so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always be prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of Selwyn District and its communities. We will. Please take a seat. Councillors, today we have an apology from the Mayor, Sam Broughton, and an apology from Bob Mugford for illness. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those apologies, please? Sophie and Elizabeth. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Now, do we have any extraordinary business today, CEO? We don't. Any conflicts of interest anybody would like to register today? Deborah? Thanks, Peninsula. Thank you, Deborah, and welcome back to the table. Now, just before that, I'd also like to welcome our CFO, Alison Snedden, who's in the room for the first time today over the back here. Welcome to the backbenchers, so to speak, Alison, to our meeting. Thank you. Now, we had today a public forum from Gwyn Thompson from the Leaston Community Centre. Gwyn, would you like to take a seat at the end of the chamber here? If you push the right-hand button on the microphone, it will liven it up for you to speak. You have 10 minutes to deliver your message to us, and then we will ask you any questions of clarification that we may have. We won't be entering into any debate today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council officers and councillors. I'm Gwyn Thompson. I'm a long-time Leaston resident, a former owner of Leaston Pharmacy for 40-odd years, a commercial property owner in Leaston for 30-odd years, and a member and past chairman of Leaston's Community Committee in all its forms for almost 50 years. Any comments I make are my own views and supported by others in the community who have similar experience. That experience, along with over 50 years of community involvement, has given me an overview of past and current public facilities, their usage and probable future requirements in our greater Ellesmere district. Leaston has never had a purpose-built community centre of practical proportions and fit for purpose over that period, and there was wide support for the proposal when the council recognised this and included a facility in the current LTP. I speak in favour of retaining a financial provision in the LTP for a new community facility in Leaston, as proposed in the tabled reports. For all the reasons presented on pages 53, 54 and 56 of that report, which I don't intend to read out, I'm sure our community would support option 4 for the new facility, which was a new multi-purpose facility with increased community space and options. On the Leaston Park options, option 4 for a complete master plan will probably receive most public support. Option 5 for the Leaston Park report features an outdoor open space, and that space would be very vulnerable to the frequent prevailing winds in Leaston. The easterly, nor'wester and the southerly in an open space are not a good mix. New public facilities need to cater for expected growth in the district over the next 50 years of development. I think we're all well aware of that, and it's a going forward fact. There are 38 houses currently under construction in Leaston Township as of yesterday, and pre-sold consented subdivision sections will result in up to 70 more over the next 12 months. That and farming development in the greater Ellesmere area ensure our population is steadily increasing at a rate well in excess of the conservative figures in the reports. Recent estimates suggest Leeston's core businesses, medical, agricultural and service providers, support a population approaching 8,000 in the Ellesmere townships and the rural areas. I applaud the effort that staff have put into the tabled reports and the recommendations, but I do have serious concerns about the necessity for councillors to make a hasty decision on LTP inclusion or not, without going back to the community to seek support for the updated proposals, as was spelt out by the then team leader during consultation sessions earlier this year. The ratepayers are entitled to be made aware of the preferred options and the process and have some say, since they will be the ones that are rated for the facility. The options were only made available to the public a few days ago, and the LTP inclusion process, I'm told, doesn't expire until April of 2024. Moves are currently underway to hold public meetings in our community as soon as possible to elect a group representing Leeston and its surrounds, and that would replace the old community committee for the area, which is no longer. And this committee would be then potentially able to contribute to any LTP discussions, if appropriate, before the close-off date. Thanks for the opportunity to address you, and I look forward to a positive outcome and an early start on a new community facility, which will become the hub of the Ellesmere district. And I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Gwyn. Councillors, do we have some questions? I have one for you, Gwyn, in the absence of any other questions at the moment. You are aware that for this to go into the LTPP process, that it will be open for public consultation, and that's what that process is about. It's about taking things to the community as a whole to be able to have their say.
Right, I've possibly got when we had the consultation processes earlier this year, it was one of the discussion points was were the updated plans going to come back to the community for input. Yeah, that's probably a slightly different understanding to what you're telling me, but essentially it's the same. It needs to be discussed.
Thank you for that. Now, do I have any other questions from around the table? It appears I don't. Thank you very much.
Two more come up.
Oh, Elizabeth, sorry.
Yeah, Deborah's behind me.
Oh, and sorry.
Just want to clarify, if you could give it to me in words rather than referring to which option, because we've got, things in brackets here as well. What was the option verbally that you preferred, that the community group that currently meets had a preference for, please?
That would have been the option 4, which was for the basic unit as designed, and then additional or a larger community space.
Thank you. Deborah. Okay, thank you for that. There being any other questions? There being none, thank you very much for coming along. Good to see you again. We will be discussing this further down the agenda, which is not too far down. So if you want to remain in the room to listen to a conversation, feel free to do so.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Councillors, now we will head on to the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those, and any alterations that need to be done?
So,
Moved by Councillor Epiha, seconded by Councillor Mackay.
no, I can't. But
You can't, no?
But,
Seconded by Councillor Munt, and you have a question or an alteration?
well, I was in attendance. So
You were, oh, you're not marked as an attendee? Okay, we'll have that rectified. Thank you. Any other, Councillor Miller?
I've already notified the minutes secretary that I was an apology for that.
Yes, you
meeting.
were too. Thank you for that, Councillor Miller. Okay, I have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, councillors. The terms of reference are there for our information only, and we move on to the Mayor's report. In the Mayor's absence, if there are any questions coming out of that report that I might be able to help you with?
Sorry, just a question regarding the agenda. We had two public forums listed on the.
Oh, sorry, the other public forum is unable to make it. I believe they're ill.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. The Mayor's report. I take it as read.
Yep, so moved.
So moved by councillor Epiar,
Yep.
councillor Miller.
Interested if you could give me some background to the meeting with Bell Electric regarding commuter trains to Ralston, if there's any detail of that.
I'm sorry, I wasn't involved in that meeting. I know it was an enthusiast who was keen to talk to the mayor. Did you have any information on that, CEO?
No, I wasn't invited to that meeting.
I wonder if that could be noted as an outstanding for next, just to give a report when the mayor's back.
Certainly we can do that. We can put that as an outstanding issue. Okay, we have a mover and a question.
Well, a commendation really. I just wanted to point out, tērā tātou katoa, that I would like to commend this council on its continued commitment to support the awards ceremony for our New Zealand Fire Volunteer awards. As was stated by the Deputy Commander, governments may come and go, but the volunteers remain regardless of that. And also we are one of the very few councils that continue to support and award our volunteers. And last weekend was Neville Carter's 50-year service. So the commendation for this council and those that also participated in delivering those awards to our community. Kia ora.
Thank you, councillor Epiar. Now I'm needing a seconder for those minutes. Councillor Dean. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the Chief Executive's report, tab 8.
Thank you, Malcolm. I'll take the report as read, just to draw attention to a couple of recommendations. So you will see attached the proposed meeting schedule for 2024, which continues with along the pathway of the meetings being around a 6 to 8 week time period. And we've included in there the recess periods as well, and noted some of the Malden Community Board meeting times. So I look forward to some feedback with regards to that. In terms of just drawing your attention to the fact that there will be an extraordinary meeting held on the 6th of December. And the purpose behind that is that we have been advised by LGNZ that they will send out an information package with regards to some remits around the future for local government and a pathway forward for each council to be able to vote on. We expect to receive those remits on Friday the 24th. We will probably circulate them the following Monday to give councillors a good week to have a look, and then bring those remits forward. And at that meeting, and included in the paper, will be a request for council to nominate a delegate to be able to vote on council's behalf. And then lastly, the other recommendation that's in the paper is that there has been a commitment to bring in an additional independent member for audit and risk. And we are seeking the endorsement of Annalisa Elstrup, who's the chair of audit and risk, Councillor Dean, who's the deputy chair, and myself and Nick Carter from Brannigan's to be on the interview panel, with a view to then bringing the potential candidates back to council for endorsement and ratification.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Munt.
Two questions. The first is the delegate to vote on the LGNZ remit. Where will that be held? Do we know? And the other question is on our calendar of meetings, in terms of the regional and provincial meetings and any LGNZ events. When will we be notified about who's been allocated to which meetings so that we can put that in our calendars early, please?
Thank you. Just remind me of your first question.
Sorry, that was in terms of the delegate to vote on the LGNZ remit. Where is that being held?
Thank you. So it will be an online meeting via Zoom. And with regards to LGNZ, we have not yet had the dates for next year's meetings circulated. So when that occurs, I'm sure that we'll have some discussion at council as to who may wish to put their hands forward as attendees.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. So with the calendar, I was wondering whether we could swap round, and I have talked to Councillor Epihara about this, who is the chair of the Finance and Expenditure Committee, whether on the days that we have those, that the Planning and Climate Change Committee actually be in the afternoon and the Finance in the morning. I've found with some of our meetings for the Planning and Climate Change Committee that have been quite rushed at times because of the short time frame that we have. And I just think having the afternoon, which is a longer time, potential time, that might be easier for the meetings.
Chief Executive.
Yep, I'm happy to support that change and have no issues. I'm just looking at Therese to check that there would be no reason why we couldn't do that. No, that's fine, thank you.
Excellent. So those changes were made to the calendar when we adopt it. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you. I note that on page, well, it just says council days, and in 2024 there is a suggestion that time be spent as an opportunity to provide elected members with an opportunity for continuous improvement using Akina as a pathway. And then we have a diagram of Akina. Can someone help me out with regards to where would this sit in the governance budget? Is it a training budget issue? Is it council related? And I just like some more information about it, because there's Akina foundations, there's a whole lot of people using Akina, and we have a program here, and I just like some more information.
Thank you. So the program, it was circulated by the mayor a number of weeks ago out to all councillors as a suggested opportunity. So part of the challenges is that on most of the Wednesdays we've been going out on bus tours and going around the district, and perhaps rather than continuing that, seeking some governance, leadership and development for councillors. So the kind of programme is run by LGNZ, and we are subscribed to that programme, and it provides a range of different education sessions based around governance and upskilling. And once we have the full programme that they have to offer, I think that the mayor was seeking to put that programme out to councillors, and then being able to pick and choose throughout the year which of those programmes that you would like delivered to you collectively as a group.
Budget. We've got the idea of budget. Any idea of the cost, and where's it apportioned to? Is it our training budget, or is it a democracy budget?
It cost $8,000, and it came out of the democracy budget.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I think great map. Just a question, there's nothing on there about the bus trips similar to the one we had this morning. Will they be added in, or have I just missed it?
So that was what I was referencing before about changing from perhaps doing the bus trips that have happened over the last year and swapping that out for education.
Thank you.
Councillor Epihara.
Kia ora, kia ora, Sharon. Tēnā koe. Can you please remind councillors and also advise our public the benefit and the requirement to adopt a second independent member for audit and risk, please?
In terms of the Office of the Auditor General, has some very clear guidelines around best practice to have independent members of audit and risk. They certainly recommend that there should be an independent chair and plus one other for councils to consider. And the benefit of that is objective outsiders who can contribute in a different way and provide a different lens to some of the audit and risk challenges that councils face.
Thank you.
Representative Mackay.
Kia ora. I have three really simple questions, and they're basic because obviously this is all new to me. So the first is, there's a few dates on Wednesdays, 5 Wednesdays where it's not in recess, but they're not allocated. Is it just fair to assume there will be something on a Wednesday, even if it's not written in the calendar?
Thank you. That's a very good observation, and it is one that is likely that we will have some sessions inserted into that at a later date. At the moment, there is nothing there as a standing item, but I think it's well understood that Wednesdays is the allocated time. So we kind of tried to leave ourselves a little bit of flex to insert last minute opportunities.
Okay, great. Thank you. And also, I noticed some dates here in May for the long-term plan hearing. Are all councillors expected to, are we all involved in that, or who's involved and who's not?
Yes, are you talking about the hearings?
Yeah, yes, the 10th, 13th and 14th of
Yeah,
May.
so it is recommended where possible that all councillors and representatives attend. So that's when we councillors hear the feedback. So there's 2-phased approach. They hear the submissions, and then there's some space, and the following week there is some time to debate those submissions as to what goes forward.
Okay, thank you. And my third question is, if we already are aware of dates that were unavailable, how do we submit our apologies? And sorry, I should have read the terms of reference.
No, that's absolutely fine. You can submit the apologies to either myself or the mayor, or actually straight through to Therese, and she will advise us.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Glidden.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was just looking around the school holidays, and I thought that we had 1 week's recess for in the school holiday period. And I know that term 1 and term 3 states 2. I was just wondering why there was a change in that.
That was not intended. Been very generous giving 2 weeks off.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Dean, you're back again.
Yes, I have a second bite. I just wanted to make a quick comment about Councillor Epihar's question about the second independent person. It was debated, we had a meeting in which it was debated about the skills match for the audit and risk. And we identified some areas where things needed to be added in. So that was it's been a very robust process.
Thank you for that point of clarification. Now, can I have a mover and a second of, oops, we've got one more. Elizabeth's come back.
Sorry, just a quick one. With the Acona workshops, are we looking at coming together and doing that together, or is that just an independently done at home option?
No, the preference would be, it would be people, the group together.
Right. There being no further questions this time, I'd like a mover and seconder to move the Chief Executive report and the attachment with alterations which have been brought forward to the calendar. Councillor Reid and Councillor Epihar. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Tab 9.
Include item D as well, endorsing the makeup of the panel.
I think that was all the attachments within the report.
Sorry.
Tab 9, Chief Executive. We have a court annual general meeting.
Yes, and this is just a standard paper brought forward seeking to appoint delegates as the proxy votes for the court limited annual general meeting to be held on Wednesday, the 6th of December.
Any questions? Councillor Dean.
Yeah, just quickly, are councillors able to go to that if they're not proxy, or is it just suggested that in fact it's only the mayor and the deputy mayor there?
Councillors are most welcome to attend.
A mover and seconder for that report, councillor Dean and councillor McInnes. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Tab 10, Whatever Leaston Cultural Centre and Community Centre and a library and Leaston Park. We have a team coming to talk to this, as it is a large issue which has got larger.
Okay, tēnā koutou katoa. Today we are presenting the Waihora Whātaro Options Report. This was presented to councillors last week in a briefing session. It's on the 8th of November. This time it's more of a formal report to you, and we have a number of recommendations. The report starts on page 78. And like I mentioned last time, this project has been delivered under council's new project management framework, and it's a collaborative approach across the different departments. And today I have Denise Kidd, Nikki Moran and Jenny Nicholson with me to help present this to you today. And we have a lot of other staff around who have been involved as well. So we just go to the next slide. Yes, we don't have this on the screen quite yet, so I'm not sure if we can work on that while I continue for now. But the purpose of this session is to present to council the outcome of the options evaluation for Waihora Whātaro and its recommendations. It's important to note at this stage that the options are at concept stage. It's also important that we bring this report to you now because there are financial implications. We also bring this information to you now before we have headed down the track of detailed design, where we may end up in a situation which is not affordable, and we'd rather readjust now before proceeding any further. Awesome, and our presentation is now up. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Denise.
Kia ora koutou. Just in terms of the presentation before you and the report that you've received, all of the work that has led us to today is anchored to a decision that was made by councillors, and Jen and Nikki will highlight this in the presentation that we're giving. That decision of council guided the direction that council teams took and the recommendations before you. But firstly, some context about Leaston. While the population growth projections for Leaston and Ellesmere are relatively modest, Leaston is signalled as a hub for Ellesmere in the area plan. Leaston is signalled as a focal point for jobs and for community activity. And it's also recognised that Leaston is a close township to Ngāti Moki Marae, the home to Te Taumutu Runanga Hapu, being 14 kilometres south of Leaston. Waihora Whātaro, the facility and the grounds, or such a facility located in Leaston, is supported in principle by the council's facilities and network plan to perform the function of a keystone facility and reserve in the hub, that is, the Ellesmere network of grounds, halls and centres. For council's general information, Dunsandel Community Centre is located 16 kilometres away from Leaston. It's a 13-minute drive. Lakeside Memorial Hall is located 5 kilometres, a 5-minute drive. Mead Hall, which sits in that network or cluster, is located 27 kilometres away. Doyleston is a 3 kilometre away, 4-minute drive. And Calintry Pool and Community Hall, 6 kilometres, Southbridge Pool and Leaston Learners Pool, with the Southbridge Pool being 7 kilometres away. And other halls in the vicinity include Southbridge Hall, which is 7 kilometres away. And the purpose of me sharing that with you is so that you understand the modelling that's been done in the Leeston Facilities Network Plan is to identify the opportunities to treat such facilities as a hub and spoke model with a centre facility servicing some of the peripheral community centres and halls, just for your information as we go through this presentation. So, who's next?
So this slide here takes us through the LTP decision that was made in that 21-31 period, and that is gives us the starting point for how we've progressed this project. And so just to paraphrase the content of this, so Leeston, when this was written, Leeston is the only significant town in the Selwyn area without a council hall or community facility. Back in the 2018 to 2028 LTP, there was overriding support for a new facility, and that was to be included in the 25-26 program. Moving on from that, in 2019, a needs assessment confirmed the desire for a new community facility, that it should be flexible, multi-use and adaptable community space. The study also confirmed that Leeston Park was the preferred space or location. In parallel to that, with our current facility, we do have weather tightness issues with it. It's earthquake prone, and significant capital investment is required to remediate that building. So as part of that decision and all those factors taken into mind, it was practical to consider a combined facility that could provide efficiencies in both capital and operating costs. Within that, there was it talks to a 900 square metre building, providing a vibrant hub for Leeston, and the use of mixed spaces to reflect both location and network requirements, as well as a point of difference. So to achieve the point of difference is a focus on culture and heritage. So the proposed includes connection to the cultural narrative and the locality, especially in terms of proximity to Te Waihora and Te Taumutu Marae. Built into the budget was a potential contribution to an indoor court space. At the time, there was some discussions with Ellesmere College. When it came to the LTP decision, just to summarise the results of the public consultation, 28.3% supported the new facility, 16.1% preferred to upgrade the existing building, 14% preferred to defer the project for 10 years, and 41.5% had no preference. Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Jen has talked to you about that Council's key 2021-31 LTP decision, and I'd like to take you, this is yours. It is, my apologies.
Right, so carrying on from that, we'll get our thing going. But based on what went into that LTP decision in 21-31, what we drew out of that was the vision and outcomes of what we wanted to achieve, or what we felt needed to be achieved for Waihora Whātaro, which was to create a vibrant and inclusive community hub that provides a welcoming place for Ellesmere people to socially connect and participate in diverse activities. And so that's the vision. And in terms of the outcomes, it talks to a well-designed building, equipped and multi-purpose and flexible, with that unique point of difference. Through the physical spaces, enabling us to deliver high-quality services that support Leeston and its visitors, as well as communities' wellbeing aspirations. The other two outcomes that we have is around creating that community focal point for Leeston, and also celebrating the rich history of and culture unique to Leeston, its place in Selwyn and its place in New Zealand.
Right. I'd like to take you through the project's journey, which actually began 4 years ago in November 2019, when the Leeston Library and Service Centre's weather tightness and seismic strength issues were identified. So that's the top left-hand corner. The Leeston Community Facilities Needs Assessment was undertaken early the following year and completed in April 2020. And the key recommendations of that assessment was about a future community facility with modern design, multi-purpose, future flexible, and meeting gaps in provision, and providing smaller spaces to support passive recreation and to be well equipped and to include the arts and culture elements and to connect with the cultural uniqueness of the locality. That needs assessment was also undertaken, it also included community consultation at the time. And then in October 2021, Council adopted the Selwyn Community Centres Halls and Network Plan. The principles underpinning that plan include the creation of an integrated and complementary network of facilities that are fit for purpose, consideration of whole of life costs and environmental sustainability, options for partnering, collaborating, co-location and integration, future-proofed again and future flexible in design, reflecting the community in which they are located, and with staffed keystone facilities operating within geographical clusters of smaller centres. Leeston at that time was identified as a keystone or a hub for the Ellesmere cluster. The Waihora Whātaro project was mobilised in 2020 with the development of the cultural narrative, which was completed in March of that year, and followed by the cultural design guide in April. A new cross-council project team was established and work commenced at that stage on the development of an operating model. One team sharing best practice and learnings and working together, connecting Whātaro, the landscape, the park and the community services and community development into one project, Waihora Whātaro. Out of that group, a design brief was developed, and drawing on the operating model conclusions, it was released as part of an RFP process, which was completed in December 2022, nearly a year ago. The project group selected Architecture HDT to prepare a concept design and Aircom to complete a concept design cost report based on the 900 square metre facility, which had been confirmed in the 2021-31 LTP. And these were completed in the first quarter of this year. Also at the beginning of the year, 2 consultation evenings were held in Leeston with the existing sports users and club groups. And in relation to, that was in relation to the draft Leeston Park Master Plan, and submissions were received and were largely supportive of the overall goals of the project. Further consultation was undertaken at the Leeston Library and Service Centre on the 2nd and 3rd of March. People were invited to engage with ward councillors and council officers about Waihora Whātaro. The display remained in the library for about 2 months and more than 300 ideas were shared. Ideas included what could be provided, traditional ideas like cosy reading corners, 3D printers and creative spaces, what they'd enjoy in relation to the building, natural light, small breakout rooms, spaces that could be shut off, and a pleasant outlook. And other comments like bifold doors, solar panels, fruit trees, and so on. But importantly, there were many comments about being simple in design, linked to the continuation of the cycleway and other practical issues. The ideal size of the meeting rooms at that consultation mostly mentioned 10 to 50 people, and only one person suggested something larger. Equipment, and then they also talked about the types of equipment that they'd like provided, fairly similar to what we provide in other libraries and service centres across the district. In May, the project group provided this this forum with a briefing, and we shared the costed concept design. And since May, the team, many around me today, have been working on developing a business case which has included 7 potential designs. The project has not progressed beyond concept design, and the Waihora Whātaro design principles have guided the work of the project team to date. Each of these principles comes back to the finding of the needs assessment, the network plan, the cultural narrative, the operating model, and the feedback from the engagement days. This slide gives you a summary of the 6 key design principles that we have seen coming through all of the various channels.
Okay, so this slide is a new slide following on from the briefing paper. In a moment, I want to go through 7 options for the Whātaro building, and we thought it'd be useful to provide some artistic illustrations of what we are referring to. So option 3 is the concept Whātaro, and so you can see 2 images on there, how it looks. So it's a it's a great design, triangular in function and size, with the picture there looking at what the building could look like in perspective. Option 6 is the West Mountain buildings. That's the current building that's been built in West Mountain, and that would be using an existing design and placing it on the same site. So go to the next slide. On the slide, we present the 7 options. Each option has a percentage scoring relates to a number of criteria. These include the expected lifespan, capital costs, alignment with the LTP, whole of life costs, strategic fit, and sustainability. So using those criteria, each of those options have been given a ranking. Option 1 is the do nothing option. It's using the existing building, be it we note for a limited period of time. Earthquake strengthening would need to occur by 2035, which would be at a significant cost, and that brings us through to option 2. Option 2 is to strengthen and refurbish the existing building. Option 3 is the current Whātaro design that we've been talking about. Option 4 takes that Whātaro design, but then enlarges it for more community space. Option 5 is option 3, the Whātaro building, but adding additional sports courts, facility and space. Option 6 is the reuse of a previous design, as we mentioned, West Mountain. And option 7 would be trying to come to a standardized design which we could use across the district. So all those options have cost implications, and they're showing through there. The current budget for this project is $9.1 million. And the recommended design Whātaro of option 3 is $16 million. So that's a comparison. Turn over. So on this slide, we'll focus on the rating impacts, and that's shown on the right-hand side. So as a reminder, the budget is 9.1, and we're looking at the preferred option of around $16 million. Currently, the rating impact would be $31, but then bringing into the extra costs would bring an incremental cost extra of $23 and an OPEX cost of $10, bringing the total cost to ratepayer of $65 per year. And that's based over 30,000 rating units. So that in itself, you could argue, is affordable. However, the next slide, there are other projects. So Whātaro, $16.5 million, and I won't read through all of these, but just a selection. Darfield Indoor Courts, $12.1 million, and the Lincoln Event Centre upgrade of $15 million. So there's a number of projects there, and although each individual project on their own is affordable, there is a large number of projects proposed for council to consider as part of this LTP process. Along the top, there's an indication of how rates implications will increase over the years, rising from $5.43, pretty manageable, through to $173 at the 2033-34. So flip to the next slide. And we'll go one more. So this is looking at Leeston Park and the master plan. This is a great design, and this has been pulled together internally by our SEC Majors Projects team. Phil Miller has been leading that work and unfortunately can't present, so I shall be doing that on his behalf today. As mentioned earlier by Nikki, there's been a number of consultation evenings with this master plan in Leeston. The first being on the 30th of January and also a second one on the 1st of February. Phil Miller presented the draft concept master plan, we're calling that revision A, for Leeston Park, and listened to feedback from attendees regarding the ideas and thoughts for how they would like to use the park in the coming decades. As a follow-up to these events, written submissions from most of the clubs were also received. Submissions were largely supportive of the overall goals of the master plan, and they also made many valuable suggestions and requests for changes. Each submission was collated and considered individually, and changes were incorporated into the master plan we see in front of us today. The master plan allows for circulation and pathways. That's basically new shared cycleways and walkways. Vegetation, which is basically the removal of some old trees, introduction of new avenue trees and planting zones. Vehicular controls and car park upgrades, which is the restricting of vehicle movement specific areas and installing in new car parks. Addition of a junior sports field, an expansion, and lighting and irrigation upgrades. Next slide. So like Whātaro, there are a number of options from do nothing, and do nothing is not an absolute do nothing, of course. There are some upgrades that require like replacing the old and unsafe items, including lighting within the park. Option 2 is the LTP funded items only. So there's some landscape improvements to develop an extension of the playing fields, replace, upgrade the play equipment, footpaths, and seal of the car park. Option 3 is the LTP funded items and essential landscape items from the master plan. Item 4 is the complete master plan, and item 5 is the master plan plus some outdoor covered areas. So this slide, the scores used are the same criteria as for the building, and we can see the rating impacts along the side there. So I think it's important, and Phil mentioned this at the briefing session, that the master plan is infinitely flexible in terms of how we implement it. So we could do a very small portion of it now, or we could do the whole lot at once. We can do that over a year, or we could do it over 10, 20, 30 years. So having that master plan provides us a great basis for moving forward, and it will be up to council about the affordability of and what we can achieve over what time period. Perhaps if we flip back to the landscape plan. Questions. So we'll leave the presentation there at this point, and we'll open the floor for questions and pass back to the chairs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was a good report with very interesting seeing the rating impacts and the information contained within it. Councillor Epihar, you've had your light on for a while. I'm presuming you wish to speak.
First, I'm happy to move the report, but I'd like to speak to it. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Deputy Mayor. E tumu whakahaere, whakarai e Sharon, e koromatua, te tuarua, e Deputy Mayor Malcolm, e rau mana whenua, tēnā rā tātou katoa. The mana, i ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā mātauranga, i ngā mana whenua, a piki ake. E piki ake te kākano kia puawai. So what I was saying there is that I would like to lift the sacredness of the mātauranga that has been gifted by a mana whenua at this time of this conversation, to pick up that seed, to recognise the opportunity for it to blossom, and to lift it above the kōrero that we're now about to have, and to hold it in its sacredness up there, respecting the mana of our mana whenua and their knowledge and their gift taonga of this cultural narrative. I guess it comes with some apprehension, but firstly, I wanted to commend staff on their diligence and their work within the community, and their involvement with bringing this report to us. Also want to thank Wynne and the rest of the community members for turning up today. When we decided to adopt a community centre for Leeston in the last long-term plan, we committed to a development, and we committed to giving a heart to a community that we recognise doesn't have one, has never had one. So hold that thought for a moment. I will also say in front of us, as a council, we've kind of moved ourselves into a space that is looking for us to adopt an option that I'm hearing from my community doesn't fit the intended purpose and the practicalities of it, holding up that mana of the kōrero, the cultural narrative. Initially, the discussion was to have a community centre, and if we look at page 53, it clearly says 900 square metres of lifelong arts and learning, and also community recreation, which one would consider to be a hall for the recreation of. So I'm considering that a better option would be to take through the options we've got here on the board today and come up with a practical solution that is a long-term solution, not a small building, but a larger building that supports the growth for 50 years, so that we touch it once and then we leave it till the next 50 years. Leiston or Ellesmere is a ward of 10,000 people. The two largest towns are Southbridge and Leiston. Leiston is the largest at the moment, around 2,500. But I would also point out that there's 714 new dwellings under development, which is occupied. Which, if occupied by a standard whānau of 4, would actually take that town to around about what Gwyn was saying, around that 7,000 or something like that. So the report to what I'm experiencing on the ground, there's a lot more growth coming that would support a facility of a much larger size and also purpose. We've also discussed the other centres. We've discussed driving there. I thought we were a council that promoted walking and cycling. So, to provide a heart, we need it to be within walking distance. So discount some of the other community centres that aren't at least in centric. The report's also quite light. It doesn't have square metre rate on the existing option. And I feel a little bit sorry for our GP as well, because whether that's to come in another report, if I was him, I'd be kind of looking at the report and thinking, well, where do I fit into all of this, and what's the purpose there? Knowing that we also, as part of that long-term plan, adopted a council commercial and adopted to look at a potential medical investment, commercial investment. Cost, yes, absolutely relevant. We need to, as councillors, to ensure that we're prudent stewards of ratepayer assets and money. However, a council that has the ability and resources to be able to extend or look at how we do fund projects into the future, and there are a number of moving parts, I guess, to the LTP, and one of those will actually be the adoption of the financial policy, where we are looking at lifting, and they're using the purpose of that to alleviate potential cost burden on our ratepayers, one would hope. So I think to adopt the potential for the options now, as long as it can come out to be something more practical, that is more cost efficient on the ratepayers of our burden of our ratepayers, we're still yet to get there. I could keep going and going, but I think I'll leave it to the councillors now to debate further their thoughts around what is best for our community. But I would just add that it's a heart. This is the heart of a community that is growing. So consider that it's not a ward asset, it's actually a district asset, and you are district councillors. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you for your heartfelt sentiment there. I would move on to Elizabeth Munn.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge what Shane said. I feel those statements wholeheartedly fit with the community perspective, and the GP wasn't given any space in this report, so it would be good to know where that fits going forward. And I do agree that the council does endorse the walking and cycling, and that needs to come into play with more community engagement. It was unfortunate that we had a staff member that was unwell during the community engagement process, which prevented people to be able to access that during work hours. And so we limited the amount of people from the community who were able to come and partake in that. So that would be something that would be good to see happening going forward. I want to talk about the Lincoln Library. So the Lincoln Library was a $2.9 million build for 720 square meters. Is that correct?
You're saying that the LTP, you're asking, did the LTP decision talk about a 900 square meter build?
Yeah. So in our what we've received here talks about 900 square meter build. I'm just saying the Lincoln Library is a 720 square meters, correct? And it was a cost of us for 2.9 to build. Is that correct?
I can't remember offhand, but that sounds about right in
That's
terms of
the
the time.
details that I've received. Okay. So I'm just looking at why option 7 here is, I mean, if Lincoln was, obviously 180 square meters smaller, option 7 is to build this is 7 million, or almost just shy of basically $8 million, and $1 million obviously accounts for flood and sustainability upgrades. But how we've got such a vastly significant increase in the building cost. I know that inflation's risen the building cost, but that seems to be a extremely large difference between the cost of building Lincoln to what we're proposing to build here. And just wondering if there's a difference, why there's such a difference would be good to know. Yeah, and I would like to recommend that we do have with this LTP plan. I guess the key thing for me is when we provide the options going forward here, is the community able to submit in the LTP something different to the options that we provide if they seek to have a different purpose build to what we've provided in this report? Thank you.
The Chief Executive would just like to respond to the Lincoln analogy.
Thank you. Just with regards to Lincoln, I think that build was completed somewhere between 12 and 15 years ago. So it's quite a significant dollar difference in terms of materials, but there's 15 years is a quite a significant difference in time period. So what you could build 15 years ago for 2 million is absolutely no way could you build that in the current environment. Even a couple of years ago, you couldn't have built something for 2 million.
Denise, do you want to say something?
I'll respond to some of the questions and then I'll hand it over to Murray and Jen if they want to add something. So when there was you made some comments around distance and driving. I was merely trying to illustrate that we're talking about a network which would have one primary facility but recognise that it sits within a network that have other purposes that all service the broader community. So it wasn't intended to suggest that everyone needed to go to every one of those, but rather just give a sense of proximity. So apologies if that was confusing. There was a question around some limitation, what sounded like some limitations of the level of community engagement. And I guess the team have been grappling with the fact that there's no way that the LTP decision that was made by council can be responded to within the financial envelope that is provided to date. So we wanted to bring that back to council before we went out and engaged on a much more costly approach. So we have been looking at whether there are ways that we can do that and restrain the financial investment, but the answer is not. So we needed to bring that to council. We do think the timing is right for going out into the long-term plan. We think that that there are at least two recommendations that we have proposed to council for consideration that should allow community feedback into what that might be, and that is intended as a much more fulsome process for community consultation. So I guess what that's saying is that any limitations on the consultation to date, we would hope that the long-term plan consultation will remedy. you talked about thank you to the Chief Executive for just pointing out some of the cost implications. And I guess factored into all of those builds is some limitations around the reality of some land that's been purchased that requires mitigation that we can't resolve from. That needs to happen, whatever the option is that is taken. But also there is elements such as flood proneness that whatever the option does still need to be rectified. So there are some base costs that need to be factored in, whatever the options are, which add to the cost envelope that we're looking at. And I'll invite Murray to talk about the GP and the position around that. Although I note that there is an independent piece of activity. Yes, funding was made available but it was specifically to be given to a community group to undertake a piece of work that may end up coming back to council for consideration. But it wasn't council's. It wasn't given to council for that piece of work. It was given to a community group to undertake a bit of a needs analysis associated with a potential medical facility hub. We would expect that will come back in due course, but it was given to a particular community group.
I think my response will be relatively brief. The GP relationship is a commercial relationship we have. There are options, but it's not appropriate in the public forum to discuss those any further.
Thank you, Murray. Now I have Councillor Hassan.
Thank you. Can we just go to the LTP 2434 anticipated major builds? Oh, sorry, I don't have it in front of me as a, oh, sorry.
Yeah. It's on the screen.
Oh, sorry, thank you. And I've done a rough calculation, but I stand to be corrected, okay? Total 71 million, right? If we're looking at each 9.1 million of this project, am I stand correct that that's an extra per annum on every ratepayer, $65 approximately, right? From what I'm reading, and 14 cents. Forget about the 14 because I've only done a rough calculation. If we actually look at all of those projects that are there and we chose to do all of those projects at the current costing, I have calculated that each ratepayer with the current 30K population that we have is going to have an increase just in that one section of their rate component of approximately $520 per annum. Now I stand to be corrected because I'm just doing a rough calculation, right? And I asked the question around what proportion of those costs can be DC funded and what is sitting in the kitty to offset that ratepayer costs with regards to development contributions. Now, I could not find it in the report. So my late question to you, and I appreciate, you might have to get back to me on that, but that when you actually split the DC, the development contribution portion, and the public contribution that is needed, I would suggest that figure would decrease. But we have a differential here. We have district-wide rating for halls and reserves. But when it comes to collecting the development contributions, we have a rateable area around those development contributions. So the developers, as the policies written in our LTP, can expect that they are paying a development contribution for the benefit of growth as per our current policy that is ward bounded, okay? And I want to highlight that because that also impacts individually the affordability of these projects. And I could not find it in the report. So I just want to highlight, for me, I would like further information around some of the true costings that are available with regards to the development contribution section actually put into the process. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for that, Deborah. In terms of the overall cost implications of these options on the LTP, that will be a matter we brought forward to council as we move through that process. In terms of DCs, you'll be pleased to know that staff have been listening to those comments over a number of council meetings. We are seeking advice on and modelling options for a community infrastructure DC, and once that has been worked through, we'll bring that back to council as an alternative funding model.
Thank you.
It would be fair to say that some prioritisation will be required by council, and the team is looking at that in terms of taking into account some of the commitments that council have previously made, and now as we're revisiting some of those projects, there is an associated need to look at prioritisation.
Thank you, Denise. Yes, it is interesting. Individual communities have a bit of ownership of their DCs, or did used to. Next on the list, I have Councillor Dean.
I think actually Councillor McGuinness may have been before me. She may have fallen off the list.
Yes.
My light keeps going on and off.
Oh, your light is blown out. Well, Councillor McInnes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Kia ora koutou, thank you very much. It's been a while since we've seen quite this many people in the council chamber. So it's actually really good to see lots of staff, but also members of the community. So thank you very much for speaking to us earlier as well. This is a really interesting one because I remember the discussions around this 3 years ago, and the budget that we agreed then was 9.1 million for the community centre and 2.4 for the park. Both of those are now going up potentially by over $7 million each. This is not a cost that is just to the Ellesmere ward, which has expanded in size since then. This is a cost to the entire district. That doesn't mean that I don't want it to go ahead. It's just trying to put it in context. This has more than doubled already. And I can appreciate that the community would always like something bigger and better, but at the same time, we have to weigh all of those costs in there as well. And that's literally just the community services and facilities. And there's all the other costs that come into an LTP as well. So that's why it's really good that we're looking at different options to go into the new LTP, and hopefully come out with something that suits as many needs as possible. Probably not all of them, but as many needs as possible. Yeah, for as long as we can. In terms of one note I had was that walking and cycling has been mentioned a few times. Obviously, anybody who knows me knows that I'm really keen on the whole active transport and public transport and everything else. As Nikki mentioned, when doing the survey, only one person mentioned the need for a really large community space. So the majority of the need was for library use and for sort of meetings, potentially of small community groups or business meetings. And as far as I can tell, that's what's already included in this plan. So I don't really think there's a need to go further and include something bigger. In terms of going out and doing the bigger community events like big birthday parties or weddings or funerals, that sort of thing, there are local bus companies who could quite, if you wanted to reduce the amount of cars on the road, it's quite possible to hire a local bus and support a local business and get everybody there in one go. One thing I was going to ask, though, is if it would be worth considering, if there's any support for including in the consultation option 7 for Whataroa as well, which is to create a standardized design. So we've got trying to think, it's a couple of slides before this one. We've got $15 million. Yeah, there's the recommendations in front of us are to include option 1 and option 3 in the LTP consultation. And I'm wondering whether we could include 7 as well, because at least that's a standardized design. So we talk about prudent use of ratepayer funds. That is the one that would actually potentially be useful for other places, like say Pribbleton. That's my suggestion. No idea whether anybody else supports that, but yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Great work.
Thank you, councillor McInnes. Now I'll have councillor Dean.
Thank you. Jen, you mentioned some, so I've got two questions. First one is to Jen. You mentioned some support stats there. Can you rattle those off again?
Yes, one moment.
You spoke way too fast. I wrote down 2 of the 6 there.
Jen, put your mic on.
Oh, sorry.
Go.
Oh, thank you. It's quite loud then. The submissions,
Yep.
is that right? Yeah, sure. Okay, I get my glasses on for this one. It's 28.3 supported the new facility. 16.1 prefer to upgrade the existing building. 14% of people preferred to defer the project for another 10 years. And 41.5 had no preference.
Okay. That doesn't help. My question is, it's related to, you've used the word 3 times in the presentation about the needs assessment. And I wanted to talk a bit about that. Councillor Epihar and one of our submitters today talked about needing a larger facility. And Councillor Epihar also reminded us that this is a district decision and we are district councillors. And I thank you for the reminder. If Ellesmere, was even got up to 7,000 people, that's still less than 10% of the total population of Selwyn. So we need to make sure that our decisions are prudent decisions, that the people of Kerwin, the people of Darfield, the people of West Mountain pay the higher amounts that Deborah so eloquently pointed out. And I think your maths is actually pretty close. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is does the district needs assessment support this project for this community over the same needs for other communities that we represent?
My response to that would be the long-term plan decision that we have anchored our recommendation to was for that size facility based on the needs that the submissions and the needs identified in the needs analysis.
So that was the needs analysis from 3 years ago?
Yeah, based on a 900 square metre facility.
So is there anywhere else in the district where a similar facility another community would also benefit from a similar size?
I guess where that comes in is the facilities network plan, which identifies the hub and spoke model, having a main multi-purpose facility that services the network. And it would be in other parts of the district, we would have Lincoln Event Centre that performs such a function. We would have currently Rolleston Community Centre that performs such a function. And we also have West Melton Community Centre as well as the Darfield Recreation Centre in principle performing such a function.
I guess as the consultation you've had so far has been around the Ellesmere community, which has been great to know what what the support is. It'll be good to get it into the LTP to see what the rest of our community, the other 90% of our community, thinks about the expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Dean. Councillor Glidden.
Thank you. When I was looking through all this, and I went to the Whātaro scoring chart and noted that option 7 has scores a 1 for cultural integration. And I'm assuming that is because there's not any chance to do that. And so that is why it's sitting so low. So I removed the cultural integration from the scoring and it actually put option 7 as second on the list. So in my mind, I actually support option 7 of a standardised design because we're going to come across this again and looking at all the projects that are going to be included in this LTP and prudent spending of our ratepayers' money. We need to be justifiable, and I just wonder if our community really wants us to be building architectural award-winning buildings, or do they want something that is fit for purpose? And maybe it is a lot less basic, but
climate change.
It doesn't mean it needs to be ugly. And I guess my question on this was, what was the square meterage of the current concept? Because it just wasn't in this report. So Whararo is 900.
The proposed facility is 900 square metres.
Okay, cool. I mean, I support option 7. I think for long-term investment and fit for purpose for 50 years. If it had cultural integration added to it, I'd say it would probably be sitting as one of the better options. So I really think it should be included. I think that we've come too far to do nothing as well. So do nothing in my mind isn't really an option. So
I guess from the team's point of view, that's the role of council. We've come to you with 2 recommended options, and councillors make a decision around that. I guess from the team's perspective, the cultural narrative was a key element to the community centre development, and so we have an expectation with the incoming bicultural strategy that will be a requirement in any facility in the future, and so there will be additional consideration needs to be given to that cultural narrative and the costs associated with that.
Yeah, that's right, and it isn't my intention to offend on the cultural integration or narrative that has been presented, because it is lovely, but looking to the future, I think we need to move into that standardised design.
Thank you, Councillor Glidden. Councillor Miller.
Got quite a long list, so I hope you'll indulge me. I suppose just going back to the start of the project, in my recollection, we were overwhelmingly hearing from the Leeston community that they wanted a community centre which provided community space. I think as a group, we thought we could make it more efficient by including the library, because we had issues around weather tightness and the ability of the library. I guess what I'm worried about, the current design put forward doesn't really tick the boxes for the community. The day we open it, are we going to have the Leeston community going, well done, Selwyn District Council, you've knocked it out of the park. This is exactly what I wanted. Couldn't have done a better job. This is brilliant. My personal view of that is perhaps we haven't got that design. My personal view is I sort of feel it's been captured by the library element, and it's not providing the community space, which I think was the original driver. I think I'm biased because I've seen the success of the Rhodes Park facility, which has a multi-space, multi-use available, and the users of the reserve in the community, if you ask them, is it delivering for me? You would say the footy club's saying yes, the cricket club's saying yes, the bowls club's saying yes, the Pilates users are saying yes, and you know it is largely the community would go, you knocked it out of the park. Whereas I just don't see this, because I'd say if you ask the users of the Leeston, current users of the Leeston reserve, what does this do for us? The rugby club would say nothing. The rifle club would say nothing. The scouts would say nothing. The tennis club would say nothing. And so I'm sort of pondering, what are we as an organisation delivering by the delivery of this building? It doesn't seem to align with the community's desires. And I'm hearing what you're saying about the feedback, the community feedback, which is saying you want small group 10 to 50 people. That's the challenge we face as a council, is that often the feedback we get perhaps doesn't reflect the community's view of what's desired. And that's a challenge, because we act on community feedback, and sometimes we don't get what we desire. So my personal view is we've made a commitment to the Ellesmere Award to deliver a fit-for-purpose community space with the addition of library services, which I think is still the right thing to do. But there seems to be a number of flaws in our delivery model. Just looking, for instance, we intend to build a separate toilet block and 2 changing rooms. So you'd go, why? Why wouldn't that be integrated into the new community centre? Why wouldn't you put the changing rooms into the rugby club, where they could do with some money and open them up to the public? So I think I heard from what Gwyn was saying, I think there's an opportunity to go back to the community and say, have we got this right? Is it what you truly desire for your future 20 to 30 to 40 year community facility? Maybe we'll get a resounding yes from the Leeston community and I'll withdraw into my shell and be resoundingly shouted down, but I'm wondering whether I might not be. So I'll just go through a list of sort of other concerns I had. I guess thinking about Lydia, what does a standardised design look like? Because without having even a sketch design, I don't know. The West Melton proposal was put forward as an alternate. How would the library space fit into that? I'd like to think if we used the West Melton design again, there would be limited need for contingencies because we should know exactly what it costs to build that, and there shouldn't be a requirement for contingencies. Triangular design. The architect's had a lovely time, hasn't he? It looks beautiful, but if you ask a builder, is it easier to build a triangle or a square? I think I know what the answer might be. And so I wonder whether that was the smartest thing for us to let the architect get away with. There's an opportunity to use the Selwyn Sports Centre approach where we set the budget and put an RFP out and say, this is the budget, this is what we want delivered. Can you deliver an option for us? Contaminated land remediation, the number that's in the numbers here, is that for all of the park remediation, including the Carritus site, or is that just the building site alone? Because that would be interesting to know that. The challenge we're facing as a council is, in the face of cost of living crisis, do we pause these community builds and just focus on our sewage, roads and other networks? Or do we take a continual over the horizon view where we still must provide facilities for our communities? In effect, do we punish Leeston for being the last cab off the rank and everyone else gets their share, and then we say, well, actually, chaps, the bucket is empty and there's nothing for you? Sophie, I heard you when you said get a bus somewhere else. I'm just thinking, why would we build a new facility for a community that's scheduled to grow by quite a few hundred, if not thousands of people, which on day one is not fit for purpose? So I guess that's another concern. So when I look at the numbers that are in front of me, actually, if you look at, for instance, option 4, the build cost itself is actually quite modest and close to budget of 10.6 million, which was originally 9 million. Location factor of 533,000. I'd be negotiating pretty hard with any contractor to say, I want the same price as delivered in Christchurch as Leeston, if that's what we're comparing it. If they're saying we want 500,000 versus a Christchurch build, is that what we're saying here versus a Christchurch build? When I spoke to a local contractor, he said, you think you'd forget that number. But a construction contingency of 700,000 plus the project contingency of 800,000. So we're doubling down on contingency in 2 places. I think the land purchase and the soil remediation, for instance, we're already going to do that. It makes the project look worse, but we're going to do that regardless. So what I commend the team is that you've fully costed this and you have brought it to us and you have given us a very transparent picture, which often in the past we've started out with a low budget and we've ended up incrementally increasing the budget as we've gone along, which so the staff deserve a lot of credit for being really thinking this through and actually giving us a true picture, which is more reflective of the true cost. The challenge for us too is that as yet this is not tendered, so this is a best guess price. So it could potentially be more expensive or slightly cheaper, either way. So a long way, I'm getting back to the start point, is that I'd like us to put this in the LTB app, but like Gwyn, I'm getting some really strong community feedback about whether the design itself ticks the boxes and whether we are knocking it out of the park. I still think it's probably in Gwyn's camp option 4 plus, which I didn't quite sure whether that meant a bigger triangle, reallocation of space within the triangle. So maybe you could clarify that, what that meant for me, because if it's just reallocation of space, it may not be it might be a smaller library in a bigger community space. Is that what possible?
Just the couple of comments that I'd make is around the level of financial information that we have come up with, and the exploration of the various options we've come up with is the best we can do until we get permission to move forward into detailed design. So yes, there are big contingencies, and those contingencies may change, but we are not progressing with detailed design because there's costs associated with that, and there are 7 options presented to you. So that's where that comes from. And I guess if in fact the council's view is that they need to consider a third option as part of the LTP, that's the role of governance to provide that advice. And in terms of it's not in my understanding is it's not intending to make the shape of the building just bigger. It's adding on a sports court area.
Okay. Because in my mind's eye, when we first discussed this project, I suppose I thought it would be the model, a bit like Rhodes Park, where we were creating a facility which was multi-use, multi-hire, and it helped the recreational groups as well as the wider community. And that's probably why I'm still in that space. I think there's some real advantages of having the library co-located. I think that's great. I'm not sure which option addresses that, but what I'm suggesting is until we get the community centre to a space where it can be delivered to the satisfaction of the local community and the council, I don't think we should, the do nothing portion of the master plan, I would support that. Let's get the community centre ticked off and to a stage where the community likes it, but park the upgrades to the park. Once we've got the community centre in a place where it's looking, we can do something with it, then let's start looking at the reserve, because I don't think there's anyone knocking, well, again, I'd stand to be corrected, but I'm not hearing people knocking the door down saying the reserve in its current form is not usable, but I am hearing people saying we want community space.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Representative Mackay.
Kia ora koutou. So maths is fun. So I've done some stats and I can see that there's 32% of that overall budget will be spent on these 2 Leeston facilities. And that compares with the 2 facilities in Rolleston equating for about 20% of the total budget of that capital works design. But that's not the point of what I want to really say. I want to repeat what I said last week, because I think it's important for everyone to hear. And on top of that, I have some further reflections post that. So for those of you that weren't here when we discussed this as part of our workshop, the part that I shared was a little bit more about who we are as a community out at Ngāti Muki and as mana whenua. And we are not a big flash ngāi tahu with loads of money to spend. We are small and discreet. Total net worth of all assets is less than $4.5 million all up. We are a volunteer-run group. We have very limited staff who work for us. When we decide that we're all in, and it's rare for us to be all in. You would have seen us all in at Te Ara Atia, and that really reflects who we are as a community, and it shows that we won't just gift a name. What comes with that is actually an expectation for our identity to be reflected in these communities where we are the oldest residents in the area. So it's disheartening that we would talk about cultural aspects being the first to go. That isn't the journey that we've had for the last few years, and it's not the purpose of why I'm here and sitting with you all today.
Sure.
We have a bicultural strategy that's meant to actually lift and integrate our rangatiratanga, our identity and our mana within this community. And for that reason, I wouldn't support option 7. Further to that, this morning we went out on a tour of the district and I heard communities expecting large sums of money to be just spent. And I'm not saying that it's an unreasonable expectation of communities for council to deliver the community services and facilities that they need. It's absolutely right for council to do that. But I do point out a distinction that our community has not had the same level of support. And the 2 projects that I have spoken to with several of you is currently we don't have good quality drinking water at our marae. And to get that, we have to put a water bore down and it's costing us 130,000 of our money. We didn't have good wastewater facilities and we had to shut our marae down for a 2 or 3 year period. We had to fundraise $650,000 to be able to put in place a wastewater treatment facility. So comparatively, I'm just pointing out that it's right to provide for communities, but it's also really, it hurts. It's a happy hurt, but it still hurts when we're making these decisions. That said, Taumatu whānau have stood up and said, this is important for us to support this community with this project. It's near our marae, it's part of our community, we care about it. And so we endorse it and support it and hope it brings to life the cultural narrative and the name that we have gifted. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Megan. Now, councillors, we've all had an opportunity to speak at this time. I noticed the 2 local representatives wish to speak again, but before I allow that, I'm wanting the Chief Executive to address us on the options. It's very important with what we do today that we make a decision. If this doesn't go into the LTP in some form with whatever options it has, it doesn't go anywhere. So the LTP is the place where the community, as I've reiterated to our public forum earlier, has the opportunity to make comment. So I'll now hand over to Sharon to elucidate.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, I'd like to thank the staff for bringing through the range of options. I know that this has not been an easy journey. And Megan, it's about acknowledging around the standardisation build, the cultural element. There was no intent meant to offend in terms of the standardised. That was certainly brought forward as a thinking to the future and how we best expend our money. It was always intended that there would be a strong cultural element. It's just that in this instance, perhaps that had not been included, and very much acknowledge that. In terms of the team have done a really good job to minimise any cost and expenditure to date. And thank you, Jenny, because you've really minimised the costs to bring these options forward, and you've brought great financial prudence in. I really thank you for doing that, and not expending large amount of dollars to come up with these options. As Malcolm has described, what we're really keen is we've presented a suite of options, and we'd really want to have those, your guidance as to which of those options do you want to put into the LTP. We don't mind if it's 1, if it's 3, or if it's all 7. At the end of the day, the team are bringing it through because we wanted to go to the LTP, and we want our community to be able to feed back. And we want to be able to demonstrate to the community that here are the range of things that have been thought about and considered. And there is no easy answer. And I went out to the Leiston community group meeting, I think 2 weeks ago. I've lost track of time. And we had an open conversation around community engagement. And part of the challenge, and I've heard that reflected around the table today, is that we have there isn't any one particular group who can claim to represent the community. We have lots of different pockets and groups that have fed into this, and you heard that from the numbers that came. So this is the challenge: is that we want to go out there, we want to do our best, we want to collect information from across the community, demonstrating the many different options that are there, and really what we're seeking is councillors and our governor's guidance as to which of those options would go forward. If you ask us to go away today and work something else up in terms of where we're sitting around timeframes from the LTP, I'd have to be honest and say we simply do not have the time to go away and work up an 8th or 9th option. So I would really, strongly encourage you to give us some guidance as to which of the 7 options presented to you, how many of those you want us to take forward into the LTP. And let's give our community and the wider community and our Runangers that absolute opportunity to have that input and guidance back, so that you can have good, healthy debate when you read the submissions at the hearings.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Now, Shane, you were the original mover of this, and I'm going to give you the option to think through what you've moved, whether you might want to change what you've moved. And while you're doing that, I'll give Elizabeth the chance to have a second bite at the cherry.
Thank you for that. I thank you for what you just addressed, and you answered some of my questions, which is we could have all 7 options. But my understanding is that you would prefer it if we narrowed it down rather than have all 7 options in the long-term plan. Is that correct?
At the end of the day, you're the governors and it's your decision.
Okay.
Our job is simply to provide you a suite of options. What we're asking you for is that governance direction of how many of those options do you want on the LTP?
Sure. If we couldn't have had all 7 options and we were going with the original, which was to only have 2, then I would have liked to have asked that this was to lie on the table until after Shane and I had an opportunity to discuss with the whole of the community about which were their preferred options to put in the LTP. But if that's not required, then
I would say to you that is the purpose of the LTP, is to have that discussion. That's why we're keen for governors to give us some direction today of those options, because the LTP is a vehicle to hear back from the whole community.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Epiha, you have an opportunity now to make an amendment or to the original motion.
Thank you.
Think wisely, and I look forward to what you put forward to it.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Malcolm, Deputy Mayor, and Megan, mo te pai o te noho tahi me te hea tāhua i ngā kōrero e toi a mai i ngā kaupapa a waihora whatarau te nākau. My kōrero, thank you very much, Megan, for reminding us that not only is our prudence to cost, but also to the well-being and the mana of our hapuri, our community. So thank you for reminding us all of that. And also, whilst I have lifted up that kaupapa, I also now draw it into our hearts to remain there as part of the deliberations moving forward. And thank you all for the work. I would put forward, Deputy Mayor and Tumu Whakahaere, Sharon, options 1, 4, 5 and 7. The standardised design has no details. So if we're looking at exemplars of a standardised design, I mean, the cost difference is very narrow, spread over a long period of time. So standard, perhaps that's not quite the right word, but there needs to be more detail in the standardised design that incorporates mātauranga mana whenua. So I think if there was more clarity around that and incorporated, I think, the 5 and the 7 and the 4 could be one option done right. And a combination of what is it currently an exemplar standardised design, whether it's a West Melton or whether it's Rhodes Park, that needs more definition. So those would be my recommendations. Also in line with the LTP, and as Councillor Dean pointed out at the time, the data would suggest one should be considered given that type of data, even though I think it should be used as rationale. I would respect that to be part of the deliberations moving forward to LTP. So that would be my recommendations moving forward. Okay.
So you are moving, in the first part in A, the council, puts the options 1, 4, 5 and 7 in there for the LTP for consideration.
Yes.
Can we have that up on the board, please?
Sorry, I've just got to bring that recommendations back up.
Yeah, B is left.
Sorry.
Section B.
And section B?
Look, we sorry. The discussion around section B is also implicated by a feasibility study that council's also funded, and the recommendations put forward at this point, as I understand it, don't have a reflection on the potential for that, or is that considered as part of the feasibility from the Friends is reference that I make?
So that feasibility study is progressing. We're due to receive the report on the 8th of December. That will go to the Friends of Ellesmere Hospital for them to digest, and we'll have a discussion around that with them in terms of any changes to the report that they might like to make. But essentially that feasibility study stands as it is as a project. That is their report, and they will then have the option as to how they bring that to council and when they bring that to council to discuss. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess just to put lastly, as was part of the consultation with the community, and again, I think expressed last week, there's been no investment for the last 25 years in Leaston in the park facilities. So all of the options, in my opinion, should be included depending on, and then perhaps the discussion is around the phasing of that to accommodate costs. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Councillor Epiharam. Seconded.
No, sorry, I'm not seconding it. I want to actually add an issue of clarification with regards to B.
Yes.
Was the mover and the second, and I don't know as the seconder, was it to include all of those options in right up to the 9.5 million, which is the option for consultation as part of this whole project?
I believe that is the intent.
Okay.
The do nothing options missing.
Yeah, and I'm going to move an amendment to that, and I don't know whether I'll get a seconder, but I'd like to add the do nothing option to B. And I haven't got a seconder for it, but I'm just putting it forward that is what that's what I'm moving.
I've made a grievous mistake. Apologies, Deputy Mayor. I wanted to include 3. The exist whatato. My apologies to.
Hang on, where are we at? I'm lost.
So if I've understood, you want to include in part A 1, 3, 4, 5 and 7?
That's correct. And part B, we have an amendment on the table that we have an option, a do nothing option.
Yes.
C, is it? It'll include a
Yes.
Okay.
No, I don't have a seconder for that.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment?
I'll second that.
The amendment.
Yes, it's part B.
Part B amendment. Part B amendment has been seconded by Councillor Miller. So we're dealing with Part B amendment, not the substantial motion at this time. So can I have an indication as to yay or nay whether you agree to the adding of including a do nothing option to Part B of this recommendation? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? I think it's carried. Do people want to show hands, or are you happy with that? Show of hands, please, then. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. And those against? 1, 2. So it stands. So now we go back to the substantive motion, which is the 2-part motion, which is A, we agree to include the following whānau options, associated costs within the long-term plan 224 to 34 for community feedback options 1, 3, 5 and 7. And B, agree to include the following Leaston Park options and associated costs within the long-term plan for community feedback, include a do nothing option and the others as they are written. No, they're written they're written in on the page behind me, which is on your substantial motion.
Do nothing.
So that leaves you with three options there and a do nothing option as well.
Hasn't the do nothing option gone? Yeah.
You've actually already approved B. It's
Well,
really just
well,
changed to
Yeah, we've actually approved B, so sorry, B has been approved, got that wrong. We are now looking at substantive A part of the report. So that is that, as you can see in front of you, 1, 3, 4, 5 and 7 be included in the long-term plan for consultation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
There's no
Against?
discussion. It's just a straight motion, is it?
Yeah.
Sorry. This feels like, so we're putting 5 options there.
Yeah.
And 3 options on the others. And I'm just wondering if anyone can give us any input as to whether, because how is this going to affect the quality of the consultation?
Well,
When
it's just
people are,
it's too many options.
there's too many options.
Yeah.
Is my thought.
Yeah.
What I was going to suggest, Your Worship, Standen. Can I?
Yeah, yes, go for it.
I wanted to make it, as Sophie said, a bit clearer for our community. Option 1 is do nothing, so it should stay. Options 3 and 4, my understanding from the staff is that option 4 is option 3 plus stage 2. It's an add-on. So maybe we could refine that to be option 3, including stage 2. So you could have a staged approach, stage A plus stage B. And then I think my personal view is that 5 should be taken out because I can't see how that's possible for us to accommodate a library within existing West Melton design, having been there, and I just don't think we're wasting staff time by including it. And then you have the 7, which is the total. So 1, 3 stage A and B, and 7.
So
does that make it clear? Is that enough refinement, or do you want to have another go at it?
we are now getting into the stage where we are
Indulgence of the mover, though. That's the mover.
with yes.
I understand the intent of the recommendation, and it was my intent that a combination of those things could be brought to what is a standardized design. That's why I had included them in the options. And if we're voting on those and which we've looked like we're moving into joining a couple of them together, perhaps 7 is an amalgamation of 5 and 4. The community presentation that was just brought to us before recommended that they would like to see 4 in as an option.
Take out 5 then.
So are you willing to take out 5?
I'm happy to take out 5.
That makes it clearer for the staff and public going forward to the LTP. Remembering this is going to the public.
You public get to vote on it.
So mover and seconder. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. So moved and seconded by Councillor Munt.
Yeah, she wants to.
Right. I think we're getting to the stage where we can vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? I declare it carried. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to what happens in the LTP as we go forward. Thank you, staff, for your input. It has been a bit of a process to get to this stage. And just before we move on to the next item, I'd just like to take this opportunity. I believe that a member of our staff who's been integral in a lot of the planning of a lot of work that's happened here over the last 5 years finishes with us at the end of the month. And as this is the last council meeting of the month, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Nikki. Nikki's moving on back into consultancy where she can sleep in a bit more often, I think is what she said. So thank you very much, and thank you everybody. We'll now move on to the next tab. Where are we? We are on to tab 11, the recommendations from the Representation Review Committee. So we have a recommendation here that this has come out of the Representation Review Committee. Councillor Dean, do you wish to say anything on this matter? Oh, Tim can speak to it. Is Tim here? Oh, Tim's here. Tim's taking a seat at the table now, so that's fine. Tim, I'll leave you up to this, please.
Anyway, I suppose there. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I think some comments from the subcommittee would be useful, but I'll just perhaps briefly introduce you to the report. This is indeed a recommendation from the Representation Review Committee, I think from the 10th of October, in terms of whether we have Māori wards or not. And I'll take it that you've read this paper. And so while the determination around Māori wards isn't actually part of representation review, it is normally done in a parallel process. So that's why we've had a look at it through this a representation review process. So there are some thresholds to be met in terms of whether a council can have a Māori ward, and they're set out there in terms of the population, and there's actually a formula that comes to a particular number. That number needs to meet 0.5 in terms of a Māori ward member ratio. The current standing is in this report is 0.43, so it falls short of that. And actually the more recently released stats numbers from a couple of weeks ago, that number has actually dropped down to 0.34, so quite short of the 0.5. The only way in terms of how the formula works of getting up to that threshold is to increase the number of councillors. And I'll remind you that in past reviews, this council has wanted to go in the other direction and actually have less councillors around the table. So in terms of why the subcommittee reached their recommendation, one is a statistical threshold has just not been met, and we'd have to increase the number of councillors by at least 3 to 4 now, since that ratio has dropped to get to that threshold. There's also been some indication from the local Runanga that they are not in favour of having a Māori ward. And so that's the reasons, I guess, the subcommittee did come to this recommendation. Anyway, look, I'll just leave it open to questions, and perhaps some comments from the subcommittee members would be useful also. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Dean.
I'm going to speak, but I don't like Councillor Epihar to speak after me, if that's right. Well, we debated this around the table here for some time, and we deferred it, and we took a lot of advice from outside the room before coming to support the mathematical recommendation. Ironically, that's what we were working on, and it's a good decision for now. But I think that as we go forward, it's something that we need to keep at the forefront of our mind, is around that. It's around the representation, and that's all we have. Now I'm going to leave the explanation. Councillor Epihar has got some much more thinking on that than I do.
Thank you very much, Tim, for the report, and thank you very much, Council. Yeah, I guess it's been an interesting journey. I was part of the representation review in the last one as well. And as Mātā Waka or Iwi Māori not of Ngaitahu descent, it was quite emotive to me to ensure that Council's obligations were fulfilled. So this carried on to this next review. And I think through that journey, I've come to understand what rangatiratanga means in a rohe of Ngaitahu. And I've grown through that experience to understand that by adopting and being more of open mind in terms of governance, that being led by my heart and my head has proved to be a more beneficial to the district, to those that visit here, but also more respectful of our partnership with our mana whenua, to the agreements adopted by legislation for the benefit of all. And I'm seeing that in the next report. And for that, I'm absolutely and very humbly grateful for respecting the mana of our mana whenua, ngai te rui hiki ki taumutu whānau, tēnā koe. So as the mover of also this recommendation today, and also adopting that recommendation through that committee, I commend the council and our partnership and dedication to mana whenua. Kia ora.
Thank you. Representative McCall.
Wow, that was, just want to acknowledge you and your journey and the position that I've seen you shift. Yeah, quite substantially. And I wasn't expecting that, and I've just got to say thank you and acknowledge you for that. And it is our role as mana whenua to make sure that ngā mātawaka are cared for, supported in Manaaki. So if we get it wrong, you let us know.
Tēnā koe.
Just to add that Taumi Tūrunanga had a meeting with the executive team, with the council on Thursday night where this was discussed again, and it was taken back to our Runanga Hui on Sunday, which I know was after the fact. However, the position has not changed. And so when I say our Runanga Hui, that's when 6 times per year we invite all of our whānau to come to the marae and talk about the matters most important to us. So reconfirming our position. Kia ora.
Thank you. I have Shane as a mover. Do I have Phil as a seconder? I do. So any other discussion? No more discussion. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tim. Now, we will move on to tab 12, approval to grant this easement from Reserves Act and Toswell Road, Prebleton. It looks like a fairly straightforward.
Got Rob here.
We've got Rob here. Rob, would you like to speak to this, please?
Extend over 2 hours.
Are we over 2 hours yet? 4 minutes to go and we're stopping for a cuppa. You got 4 minutes.
Not rushing it.
It'll be a lot shorter than that, I believe. Cool. This is by one of my team. I've just come back from leave today, so just read through the report. It's a fairly standard report for a private easement under Section 48 of the Reserves Act. Because it's purely for private use and subdivision, they are going to compensate council for the right to put the pipework through council reserve. This is a matter that cannot be delegated. The delegations refer to a decision by resolution of council. That's why it's come to a full council meeting.
Thank you, Rob. Pretty standard. I have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor McInnes and Councillor Munt. All those in favour say aye. Oh, Grant, give us.
Oh, well, I was hoping to move it, but no, well, I just wanted to ask one question before we did it. It appears the existing house, and you may not know this, that may be too operational, would go out to Toswell Road. I was just wondering why it had to go through our reserve back the other way rather than out to Toswell Road. It's in through their own private property. Is there a?
I think I'll look over to Murray England now in relation to that side of it. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is for the new development, which happened, well, we've gone through a number of private plan changes, and this is this large parcel of land has been opened up for development, and so that's the way of getting that large development once it's subdivided to gravitate through to our network. This is a sort of an interim measure, and ultimately there'll be a pump station which will pump through to there. This will allow us for now to get the first stages underway, and then there'll be additional infrastructure put in place.
The rationale for asking that was just to understand why it didn't go through his own property to Toswell Road rather than going the other way through our public land. But if there's an engineering reason, it's fine. Okay, in favour.
Thank you for that point of clarification. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, we're now adjourned for afternoon tea. See you at 3:15. Thank you for everybody. Councillors, please take your seats.
Chair, just to remind that there's just one item on that I'm declaring a conflict of interest, so.
Thank you, councillor Hassan, for
And that's-
alluding me to that.
Proposal for new funding, so, yep.
Cool. Welcome back, councillors. I trust you're refreshed. We are now looking at tab 13, community funding. The floor is yours.
Kia ora koutou. So first up, I would just like to acknowledge the input of colleagues from across council into the development of this report. So you'll see from the report that community funding is across the council, and we've called on those colleagues for the information that's contained in it. Before I give a brief background to the report and draw attention to the key recommendations, I'd like to note that much of the information contained in the report is for context, and that a lot of it will be considered by council within LTP considerations. And so today the focus is on proposed changes to process and systems in particular, noting that a lot of the content of the report is for consideration at a later stage. And so that may be where there's particular interest, but that's not a decision that council's being asked to make. The recommendation around that is for noting. But what I do just want to point out by way of introduction is that council currently administers around $1.1 million in funding to individuals and community groups in Selwyn. Around $1 million of that funding comes from council funds, and the rest is funding from Creative New Zealand and Sports New Zealand for specific purposes, and council is tasked with administering that funding. The Community Fund delivers all kinds of great community initiatives, and it's a really important mechanism for supporting community wellbeing and to deliver council outcomes. However, there are a number of challenges which we have made recommendations to resolve. I just want to note a few particular ones because they come up in multiple places in the report. But some of the challenges are that the funds are administered by different parties across council using different processes, different mechanisms for record keeping, and these mechanisms don't talk well to each other. And the challenge of that is that it doesn't give council a complete picture of what they're funding, and it makes it really difficult for both council and community to see transparent information, or for council to be strategic in the decisions that it makes, or for council staff to administer those funds efficiently and effectively. There are 7 recommendations in the report, and the first 4 are significant, and then there are a number of smaller proposals. And really in this background, I just want to talk to the 4 significant recommendations, which are to create one funding panel for contestable funds, to bring the administration of all of the funding under the community services and facilities groups, to combine 4 of the community funds together because they have similar or the same objectives, and to create a new individuals and team fund using some of the ward discretionary funds. So I'll speak briefly to each of those 4 significant proposals, which, if approved by you today, will be implemented from the start of the next financial year, which is the 1st of July 2024. So I'll just talk a little bit briefly about the creating of one funding assessment panel for the contestable funds. So the purpose of this is to allow the people on the panel, so we would anticipate that that panel would have one councillor from each ward on it, and there would be scope to be looking at iwi representation and potentially others within that. But the purpose of having one panel for all of the contestable funds is it would allow that panel to get to know the community better, the needs of the community better, and also to understand the funding picture for the community. It would allow the council to be more strategic. The panel would get to see all of those contestable applications coming through and get a sense of what's really important to the community. The funding panel would meet once a month and across the year, except for the Christmas close down period, and funding dates would be adjusted so that you'd get a consistent and regular allocation of funds across that rather than having humps and hollows. I think the other important thing to note is that we would have experts and staff supporting the funding panel depending on the fund that they're looking at. So we would anticipate with the likes of heritage protection or the environment funds that there would be staff advisors from those parts of council and experts as there is currently for their mechanism. So by creating one funding assessment panel, it just creates an opportunity for council to be more strategic, more transparent and more efficient. The second proposal also increases efficiency, and that would be bringing the administration of all of the council community funds under one group, and we're proposing that would be community services and facilities. The reason for that is currently all of that administration is spread across the different groups in systems that are largely manual and can't talk to each other, and there is just very limited opportunities to understand what's going on and to share that, and a lot of repetition and reinvention of the wheel. So that would create greater efficiency and effectiveness. The third significant proposal is the combining of a number of contestable community funds that have the same or similar objectives. So for instance, if we look at the Selwyn Community Fund, the Selwyn Community History Fund, the contestable portion of the Residents Group Fund and the Ward Discretionary Fund, we'll see that they've got very similar objectives. They are talking to the same groups and the same groups are applying to them, and in some cases some groups are applying to multiple ones and there is an inability for each group to see who's being funded where. We would recommend that some of the funds such as the Community History Fund or the contestable portion of the Residents Group Fund is tagged so that the allocation of those funds remains for the purposes, but it just sits within that broader funding pool. It streamlines that funding process and gives greater visibility, but you could still tag those funds for specific purposes such as community history or resident group projects to make sure that the purpose of those things are not lost, the specialness of those things are not lost. Bringing the funds together, I think the really important thing about that is it does increase transparency for community and council, just about who's getting funded for what and when and what kind of projects. And then the fourth significant proposal is the establishment of a Selwyn Individuals and Team Support Fund using a portion of the Ward Discretionary Fund. So if we were to combine those four funds together, it would mean disestablishing the current ward discretionary funds because they share very similar purposes to what's in the Selwyn Community Fund. We would propose that the current funding that sits there, the 86,000 gets split. 53,000 of it would be used to create this new fund for individuals and teams, because if we were to combine all the funds together, the one opportunity that individuals and teams have for funding support to allow them to represent in competitions and things would be lost. The reason we came up with 53,000 is that looking across the last couple of years, that's around the level of the applications by individuals and groups to that fund. So it makes sense that that's the amount. And the remainder of it would go into that combined community fund for the community groups. And once again, that would reflect what the ward allocations are. Then there's a little bunch of other proposals in there. I think most of them are around noting or relatively minor things, but I did just want to draw attention to the proposal to add 4 new scholarships into the Secondary School Tertiary Scholarship Fund. That's not a decision that you're going to make today because it is a consideration in the long-term plan, but what it would do is allow for applications from students irrespective of which school they go to. So there may well be a Selwyn resident who is going to a school in Christchurch, or it may allow for more scholarships to go to one school or other. Another item for consideration, I really just wanted to draw this to your attention, but it became very clear to me in supporting Stephanie, who put together the report, that lack of grant management software is creating enormous inefficiencies for the council and create a great deal of opportunity for error at the moment, and certainly doesn't allow for transparency. And so once again, you're not making a decision on this today. This would be something that would be in your LTP be budget considerations, but a proposal to fund a piece of software and then the ongoing licensing costs. I think one point that I'd just like to note is that the council funding includes strategic partnership funding, and there is a proposal that consideration in the LTP be given to increasing that by 20,000. Now, with the strategic partnerships, you'll find that on page 88 of your report. The strategic partnerships are something that council put into the long-term plan. You'll note in our current long-term plan there are a number of partnerships that sit there. Those partnerships wrap up at the end of June, and then we would bring to council for consideration proposals about the next period of strategic partnerships going forward. So once again, we're not asking you to make decisions today about strategic partnerships. That will come to you in March, but just noting in the context of this big broad report on community funding that this is the intent, and the reason for increasing the small increase in strategic partnerships was acknowledging that one possibility may be the Summit Road Society, but as I've said before, that would be something that you'll consider in LTP considerations, along with the fact that within that contestable strategic partnership fund is a recommendation that the strategic partnership with Taumutu is not something that you would want to have as contestable. It would be something going forward. But once again, that is part of your LTP considerations and strategic fund considerations. So I won't speak specifically to the other matters in the report. I'm taking the report as read, but happy to take up any questions at this point, and Stephanie's able to answer some of the finer detailed questions as well.
Thank you very much, Denise. As chair of the present funding Community Grants Fund Committee, I welcome this change. It is a big change. It's a big change to the way in which we've done funding forever around this table in the time that I've been here. I can see the real benefits. One thing I would, if we're going to take away our ward discretionaries and roll them into this, and that's something where usually those of us within the ward know a few of the finer details of the applicants and can assist us in that decision-making process. I think it would be essential that all contestable applications are sent to all of us as councillors, even those of us who aren't on the panel, so that those that aren't on the panel can read them and ring or contact the person from that ward that is and have a conversation about that before they go into the grant funding. Tagging them is essential, so what I see is we'll probably have them under several different headings within that. Most essential. I do agree there's a lack of transparency. In my experience, I have seen people apply for one fund and not be successful and sneak in the back door at another one. Is that transparent and a good use of community funds? I don't think so. So I think it's most important that we do that. And as far as our strategic partnerships go, we haven't reviewed them in some time. I can been around long enough to remember when we started to fund Lincoln and Warratown back in last decade. Last century even actually, and I know that a lot of the groups that do get money used to report to us about what they've done with it over the years. That doesn't seem to be happening as much anymore, so I think this gives us a greater opportunity to address some of those issues as we go forward. Okay, it's enough from me. Councillor Munn.
That touched on one of my topics, which was the strategic partnerships. It would be great to have an annual report to council to see how they're spending and how things are going there. One of the big things is I actually find when receiving just our regional funds is that it's actually quite a mammoth workload to get through the applications. I'm wondering if you're also able to address streamlining each application so it's easy for us to read and get through, because whoever takes on these positions, it's going to be quite a huge workload once it's all compiled together. So yeah, just something that I'd like to raise to make it easier and efficient for us. Thank you.
Thank you. so one of the things, if the recommendation goes through today, would be that there's work done between now and May next year, when we would come back to council with a updated community funding policy and some information about how the process is going to work. So the idea is that we're simplifying things, we're making them much more efficient. And I think speaking to that streamlining of applications would certainly be something that we want to do within that, but also making fund criteria much more much easier for community to understand, because it helps the panel make faster decisions as well, and it also respects the amount of time community invest in putting an application together. So just making sure that our systems and our processes are good for community, but also mean we can be efficient and more effective.
Thank you for that. Councillor Glidden.
Thank you. I was really pleased to see that the particular responsible staff in the department would be there to advise on funds, like particularly the SNF fund and whatnot. And I really support the tagging of funds in the community fund for the residents' history, whatnot. I think that's really important. Thank you for clarifying point 6, because I had sort of read this report that if we pass this report, that we would be adding the new scholarships, but noted that that's for LTP consideration. I guess my big question around this is, how does the ward discretionary funding work with the Melbourne Community Board holding the funding decisions? That $86,000 includes the Melbourne Ward fund. So I'm interested to hear what happens there.
So it would come in. So it would be the dissolving of all of the ward discretionary funds and the bringing of those in to both create the individual and team fund, and consideration, of course, would be to Melbourne residents as it is to residents from each of the other wards, and then the rest of the portion going into the contestable fund.
So would that see Melbourne Community Board making decisions on their funding?
No. So it's one contestable panel for all funds, all contestable funds. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor McInnes.
Oh, it's me already. Thank you very much for all your work on this. This is really good, because having been on a couple of the funding panels, there's so much crossover, and I can't imagine how much time goes into the background of sorting through all of these and following up various questions. I mean, it takes us a wee while to read them. It probably takes you guys at least 5 times as long to pull everything together. And I guess there's probably the opportunity to make things a bit more a bit simpler for those applying as well, because applying for grants can take up a lot of time. And if you've got 6 different forms for 6 different Selwyn funds, then that's not that you should be applying to all 6 different funds, but trying to work out which one is applicable. Anyway, I'll stop there. So yeah, software, great idea. It exists. We can have the technology. Scholarships sounds great to me, because aside from people choosing because they want their kid to go to the school that they went to, like, there are access reasons and language reasons and all sorts of other reasons for people to go to schools outside the district. And definitely be interested in finding out more about a strategic funding partnerships review. Like, would that involve, say, inviting people to give an expression of interest as opposed to just reviewing the existing partnerships? Is there an opportunity for new groups to look into, that sort of thing? So the only other question I've got is whether it is worth putting into our LTP consultation around the total size of all of this funding that's derived from rates, because while obviously we know that people don't necessarily want to pay more in rates, these funds are constantly oversubscribed. So it would be interesting to get a flavour for whether people do want that to increase, given that the funds do go back into the community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just respond to strategic partnerships question. The review would give us an opportunity to confirm criteria for what constitutes a strategic partnership, and it would be timed so that it coincides with a long-term plan, at which time there are quite a number of submissions that come into council for money for this and money for that, and so it does provide an avenue for both the existing providers who've been funded in that way, but also for new to come in through that transparent and 3-yearly process.
Thank you for that point of clarification. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you. I mean, this may sound like a dumb question, but I'm reading on page 10 of my report. We've got the council group and you've got DG, ES, CSF, CSF, and then you've got council. Where do I actually find the acronyms, the identity for those particular acronyms in the report? That's the first question, and then I'll lead on from the next one. I always thought that the Ellesmere Reserve Board funds, right? And I don't know, I always thought that they, with regards to funds that were actually allocated at some stage, they were all had to be wound down and they all had to be spent because they were reserve funds or they were whole funds. And if any funds that were left unspent, then they went into the consolidated fund, right? So there was a date where all the community, because we wound down on the community committees, the reserve committee, the hall committees, we actually gave them a date. Any of those funds that were untagged and not used were put in a consolidated fund. So I'd like an explanation why the Ellesmere Reserve Board Fund is not in that allocation status, or what's the story?
Okay, so first of all, my apologies for not putting the explanation of the acronyms. So lesson learned, and I'll make sure that goes in, and I can get those to you later, Deborah. Thomas, you might be able to provide some information, but my understanding is that the Ellesmere Reserves Board Reserve is using income that's being generated from the endowment. So it's not it wasn't a static, it's a revenue fund. It's funded by the revenue that's coming in from the endowment. It doesn't shut down and go away. But Thomas, is there anything further to that?
Jump up, mate.
Yeah.
Come forward to the mic.
It was mostly used, it wasn't considered as part of a special fund as under the thing. It was, sorry.
As I understand it, Thomas, and correct me if I'm wrong, that what Thomas is referring to was there was a process of tidying up some outstanding grants and to consolidate, and you're absolutely right in that regard. My understanding is, and I apologise that our group doesn't have a lot of information about that. We're just finding out some of this ourselves. But that we still have to do further investigation into the terms of the trust deed that made provision for an ongoing resource based on the ongoing income generated. And so before we can form a view about where it best sits, if it in fact could go into something but be tagged, we have to understand the detail of what was in that original trust deed and the purpose behind that. So we've just, I guess my sense of that is that we've got further work to do on it, but it did not get lost in that cleanup process. Thomas, is that correct?
Yes, it didn't really fall under the special fund as it was kind of a different type, because there was the Ellesmere Reserve Fund Committee, which I don't think was a committee of council. It was its own separate kind of committee, so it didn't really fall under that distinguish of a special fund, and we just hold it as a special fund as we kind of act as a bank account for them.
If we're acting as a bank account, if we're acting as a bank account, is it possible to look at a trustee sort of arrangement?
Yeah, just from my understanding, what we do need to do, having uncovered the fact that there is ongoing funding being allocated from this, we are now with investigating the source of where that comes from, why the current recipients are receiving that fund, and considering whether or not it's best put into one of these existing contestable funds, or whether there's some particular limitations or restrictions around that. So what you propose is an option, but I guess our initial intent would be to see whether or not we can incorporate that within the process and systems that we're proposing here today, but we can't presume that until we investigate further around the original intent and the obligations that sit with that.
When it's got ES next to it, that means
Enabling services. So
Okay,
sorry, that's where the
thank you.
finance team sits.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah.
Right, thank you for that. Now, Phil Deans.
G'day. The recommendations look great, except one. So I'm going to guide you to it. It's number 8, F3. Which says, once you get there on page of the report, it's page number 3 of our diligent, it's page 126. It says there a new $50,000 contestable strategic events fund is encouraged new and large scale strategy of events into the Waimaka area. Waikirikiri rather. Selwyn refer to section 4.10. I'll take you to section 4.10, which is on page 13 or 130. Page 11 or 134 of the diligent.
Mm-hmm.
And in there it says, it says the section 4.10, halfway down the page, it says the new strategic event fund will support applications that, it's got an 2 points there, and the second point says that supports the existing large scale community events such as the AMP show in Courtenay, Melbourne and Ellesmere, Horata Highland Games, Horata Nightglow Festival, Leeston Fete and the Selwyn Spring shows. I think you need to take all that out because it's basically what you're saying is that the $50,000 fund will support big events, but not necessarily, because what it says there is that the applications that you'll prioritise those ones there over the other ones. And I'm not sure that's what you were trying to say in the report or not.
I think they were just examples.
I think it's dangerous to be in there because the organisers of those ones there will claim foul if you don't fund it.
Your point is noted,
Sure.
and we'll make adjustments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. When this comes to the long-term plan, could you provide what percentage of our total rate take is now spent on grants? Because it's great to have largesse, but I just wonder if our community in this sort of time of tightening belts might be going, is this largesse justified, or can we continue on? I guess what worries me, we keep seeing the same things pop up. Like an example is 50K for pest-free initiatives, which I applaud, but that's Environment Canterbury's role, not ours. And we've said that repeatedly at this table, that we support it wholeheartedly, but it's Environment Canterbury's role, and we're not going to rate our ratepayers twice. They're already getting rated by Environment Canterbury for that, and we shouldn't be paying again. So please don't keep putting them forward when we've told them don't do it. So I'm not sure why it keeps coming back, and that's frustrating for us as governors. And the same, I understand the Summit Road Trust is actually the Summit Road Society, which makes it clearer, but I understand that's an existing budget, slightly increased of 17.5 to 20. So it's not a totally new allocation. It sounds like it's already in the pot somewhere, which is being increased. So if that could be clarified, where that transfer is coming from and what that looks like. The last point I'd like to see clarification is while I'm supportive of IT, 60,000 to buy it and implement it, and 20,000 annual license fee seems ridiculously expensive to me. $1,600 a month for a license fee. We must be able to get a cheaper provider than that. That is just too expensive. If we can't bring that to on a per grant basis, I worked it out. If we had 300 grants a year, it's $66 a grant just for IT. Well, that's crazy. It has to be tightened up. And if that provider can't do it at a cheaper price, let's get somewhere else because that's just too expensive. Thank you.
Just like to chip in there with regards to the pest-free predator program. There was a presentation to council. I'm not sure that you were actually here just recently, I say recently in the last few weeks. And our takeaway and the reason why it's in there is that our understanding was the direction to look to include those as grants into the future. Maybe so that's the reason why it's been brought
Can I
back.
respond to that? Because the same people keep coming over and over, and it's a definition of if you just keep coming and asking the same question, hoping for a different answer, eventually you might get a different answer. But I don't think that was the.
Yeah.
I'll stand to be corrected by the wider group.
No, just that's the reason why the staff brought it forward. That was our understanding. If we've misunderstood, we apologise, but that's the reason it's there.
I may have well understood as well, and it may have been away, but that's my personal view.
Thank you for that clarification. Representative Mackay.
Well, kia ora. This is a really good report to read because it's given me information that I've wanted to know about for quite some time. So thank you. Well written and easily understood. I support the approach that's taken here with the appointment panel and welcome mana whenua being, or I think you call it iwi Māori, being part of that appointment panel, however it's made up. Also support the recommendations for how the future of community funding will look like. And although we will be talking at some time later down the track about the long-term plan and strategic partnerships, I see it as my role, like everyone else here, is to make good decisions on behalf of the community. And we can only do that when we're well informed. And my experience has been sometimes there is a lack of understanding of knowledge about who we are. And so I will always take the opportunity to share a little bit more so that I can actually go forward and state it's very welcome to see Taumitu Runanga included in the Strategic Partnership Fund. And earlier this afternoon, I explained about our assets being about $4.5 million. That's mostly made up of land, not cash that we can easily access. We have responsibilities to do a whole heap of things for our community, and the way that we organise ourselves is into 5 po, massive po, not unlike a council. Kaitiakitanga. Our environment is good for our whole takiwā. Hauora, all of our people are healthy, in good homes, well educated, and not fighting within the justice system. Marae, that we have a really good marae for our people and our manuhiri. Rua Heke, which is our cultural identity, creating pathways for our people to know about themselves, their whakapapa, their tikanga, te reo, and economic development. So how do we shift the dial so that we're not saying we're poor? So that's a little bit about who we are, and how we do it at the moment is through a grant from Te Runanga Ngāi Tahu for $525,000 per year. But our annual operating budget is around $580,000. And to do those, that's just to operate, and to do those projects and those PO that I just talked about, last year we spent $1.25 million. So significant shortfall of what we're currently doing. And when I say we're doing, it's not just for us and our people, it's for this whole community. An example of that is our marae. Last year it was, well, in this last financial year, fully booked post-COVID, 98% of bookings were for manuhiri, mostly schools and education groups who we welcome out on a daily basis at our cost. It's the right thing to do. So that's a little bit about who we are. And each year we come and for several years have talked about come and ask for money in the annual plan. And I haven't been here presenting. I've often been the person writing the submission, and other leaders will actually stand here and request the funding. And we've been declined consistently for years and years until the year 2020/2021 was the first time we received funding. We received $50,000 as a one-off grant from Selwyn District Council. So that's the extent of the support that we've received to date. And it's a drop in the bucket for what we're trying to deliver for us and our communities. So I wanted just to take the opportunity to say it's welcome to see that we will be included in an annual distribution like the other strategic partners. We're specific and bespoke, we're a treaty partner. So thank you, it's good to see it. And also I wanted to congratulate the council on the substantial amount of funding that you do provide to the community. Kia ora.
Kia ora, councillor Reid.
Thank you, and thanks for that, Megan. It's quite interesting to listen to. So unfortunately, my mic was going on off. So funny. Just some things I'd like to say. It is really great that we are combining these funds. It has been quite hard when knowing that we're just looking at the discretionary fund, and as to see that there has potentially groups that are being able to apply for other funds are not really aware across those things. So that'll be a good thing going forward. And really pleased to see expanding the Selwyn School Students Tertiary Scholarships Fund. That was something that I brought up before, that I was quite surprised at the number of scholarships we offered were the same for all our high schools, even though there's quite a difference in the number of students who are going to two of them. And question that I've got is the ward discretionary fund at the moment, my understanding, so it's population based, to give a figure, is that right? So when it's actually goes together with everything else in the other fund, will we still be looking at it like that, or how is it going to go going forward in that regard?
So that would be one of the things that we would work out in what we bring back to you around the policy change. So that the detail would be still to be worked out, but you would expect that if it's based on an allocation around population, then that would carry through into the way that it was allocated out of those other funds.
Thank you, councillor Glidden.
I've just been digesting the fact that today we would be looking at removing decision-making from the community board, and the fact that they are probably none the wiser that this decision has actually been made. And I just wonder if there's any support to propose to move the ward discretionary fund to a long-term plan consideration so that this can actually be discussed. We still have a community board, although none of the other wards do. And I understand that it is particularly difficult making decisions on that. But yeah, I don't know. That just doesn't sit that well with me, to be fair. I'll welcome any comment to it, but
I will chip in. The funding that goes to the community board goes at the discretion of councillors. And whilst I acknowledge there's been no direct conversation with the Malvern Community Board, we also have to be forward thinking and look at the broader opportunities here in the consolidation of funding. And in terms of community members within Malvern will not lose out, because, and that's the important thing to note here, Malvern community members will not lose out, and they will have a representative around the assessment panel table.
Thank you for that, Chief Executive. I hope that helps clear that up for you, councillor Glidden. Councillor Epihar.
Kia ora, Milky, thank you very much. I'm supportive of efficiency and reducing overlap, because that's what we tend to see, and then all of the work that the community has to do to submit to a number of committees, and then the following work that you guys have to do, that staff have to do, or the team has to do. So I'm supportive of creating new and efficient ways that provide cost-effective outcomes, as you've mentioned. But I would also ask for the benefit, like a post-invest, like a PIR, what has been the, I guess, how do we measure that efficiency? It'll be quite obvious, but I'm just kind of thinking along the same lines as Malky. We don't, I guess as councillors, we have more connection to our community, and therefore we can understand a bit deeper the decisions that we're making from the ward discretionary funds. So I'd hate to lose that community connection. And as I reflect on the disestablishment of the community committees and the loss of, I guess, mana from those committees, I would hate to also see that connection lost, and also a reflection on performance once implemented. So what I'm going to say, I support the move forward, but would hope that ward councillors still get to, as part of that panel, decide on the distribution of the funds. The Ellesmere Reserve Board, that's a good point, and I'm glad you've carved it out there because it does sit on its own and are bound by a trust deed from the Gamble estate for the purposes of supporting initially the Rakaia community. The funds after their maintenance of the block then put into initially the Rakaia, and then it was the Ellesmere and distributed by the Ellesmere Reserve Board. So that will require some more work, and if you don't have the trust fund, the deed, then that will frame the purposes of the distribution of that fund, and potentially that becomes the fund that supports the community events in Ellesmere, which then relieves some of the stress on the other funding pole. So I think there's a good opportunity to continue the trust deed purpose while providing relief. If also the distribution of fund is going to be population based, where at the moment, say for the scholarships, that type of thing, it's more ward focused, or the Ellesmere school gets a, then I guess I'm a little bit nervous around that. If the intent is to potentially base it on population and some other schools miss out, but I wouldn't think that would be the intention, would it, moving forward?
No. So in the report, it talks about keeping the current scholarship allocation as it currently sits, and it presents a rationale for that.
Thank you.
So that's not up for review at this particular point.
And just lastly on strategic partnerships, and being one of the councillors that moved in support of supporting our mana whenua Te Taumatu Rūnaka with the funding, the strategic funding, are you proposing that the strategic funding now moves into a more permanent schedule rather than, and I believe it's on an annual basis. It wasn't sort of that clarification on that.
The current strategic funds are contestable, and the proposal in relation to Te Taumatu Rūnanga was in relation to that particular strategic fund not being contestable, but the other strategic partners being in a contestable process that is reviewed periodically from time to time, and that council makes decisions about who those strategic partnerships are with. But what it would do would be to give certainty to mana whenua over the full life of the long-term plan, rather than on that more shorter term approach that's used with other strategic partnerships.
Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the kōrero that Megan brings to the table, because it certainly reflects a portion of our hapori, or our community, that now fairly reflects the responsibility of council. So thank you.
Kia ora. Well, thank you, councillors. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation, please? Councillor McInnes and Councillor Dean. All those in favour will say aye. Against? One against? I declare it carried.
Would you please note that Councillor?
And we note that Councillor hasn't took no part in it because she has a conflict. And Councillor Miller is not in the room at the present time. Okay, we'll move on to tab 14, Te Rataki Te Akarua Bicultural Study. Maria, the floor is yours. Strategy, yes, it is. Thanks, Mum.
Happy to be the mover, Mr. Chair.
You're happy to move it, Councillor Epiha. So the strategy has been moved by Councillor Epiha. Carry on.
Ka pai, e aku rauranga tira mā koutou o te kaunihira kia koe e te koro matua tuarua tēnā tātou katoa, rauranga tira mā tēnā tātou. Before you then is the Te Rautaki Tikaka Rua, are there 3 or 2? Te Rautaki Tikaka Rua bicultural strategy. To reiterate that the strategy has been developed over the period of 22-23 and gives effect, the purpose of the Rautaki is to give effect to our treaty partnerships and obligations, to build a foundation of cultural competence, confidence and understanding, and to provide the platform for being a good host to multiculturalism. We discussed last week before that, that the strategy is based upon 4 work streams: ka honoka, our relationships; he takata, our people; ka mahi, our systems; and he huarahi hau, a new way. That although we have not yet formally completed the work on the action plan, we actually are already actioning the plan. And so I just wanted to raise with us, to highlight with us that some of these aspirations and key outcomes identified in Te Rautaki are already naturally occurring. For example, our mana whenua representative here at Council, tēnā koe te tuakana, the establishment of Te Pou Mataho and the movement from I to we as a team. Also, we have the relationship agreement which has been already signed with Te Taumatu Runanga, the development of tailored te reo and treaty programs, which we will see most of you next week for some of that training. Participation and advice into the current plans and strategies within Council, which currently include and is not exclusive because there's a whole heap more, but involvement of Te Pou Mataho and the heritage strategy, Te Pai Pai, the ageing positively strategy, Piki Amokura, the youth strategy, Future Selwyn, economic development strategy, and currently in the LTP planning. So we actually are already enacting that plan and writing that strategy, the action plan already. The budget associated with Te Rautaki Tikaka Rua will be presented as part of the considerations as part of the LTP process going forward. Koina, is there anything else I need to add? Kei a koutou te wā.
Kia ora. Do I have any questions, comments? I'm looking for a seconder. It's been moved by Councillor Dean. Representative Mackay.
Oh, kia ora. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say well done to you all. And this is really good to see the bicultural strategy come through. And I wanted to give assurance, not that it's needed, but assurance that this has been robustly looked at from a Taumatu Runanga perspective and gone through our Ruahekeheke portfolio and our executive. So it's very much welcomed. And the overarching principles are something that I truly believe in, that it is only through building the bicultural confidence with all of us that we can actually normalise te ao Māori concepts and understanding of Mataranga Māori. So that's great. And also say the words, what's good for mana whenua is good for iwi Māori, community and council. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And good luck with the action plan. You acknowledge that I'm part of the action plan and I'm here today. And because of that, thank you for acknowledging that we're implementing this together. And I wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of the staff and all of the council for being so welcoming of me and inclusive and open to good discussion. So kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor McInnes.
Oh, no, Shane's
No,
ahead
no.
of me.
After you, Sophie.
Oh, I was just going to add the awesome thank you for all of this work, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes. I mean, I wasn't even born and raised in this country, but it's just, yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, my my kids are Māori, they're going into Reorua class, and it'd be great to see that, you know, I know this is going to take a long time, but by the time they're taking their place in the world, hopefully it'll be a place that takes in the whole lot, you know, willingly and happily. So yeah, and this is part of that. So thank you.
Councillor Epihara.
Kia ora, koro matua, e tuarua. Ko whakarara te manga ko kupu ka waikawa. Ko matauri te moana, te tapu i te marae, ko ngapuhi te whare tupuna, ko Ngāti Kura te hapu, matatua te waka, ko Shane ngā o te hahi Epiha tōku ingoa. Pau mataho, ngā mihi mana, e ngā te rau taki, tikaka, strategy, o Waikirikiri, kaunihira o Waikirikiri, te tangata whenua, te mana whenua, te tangata treaty, ngā mihi mana. I'd also like to acknowledge Koro Matua Sam, who can't be here today, for his progressive work in this space to allow for goodness and good partnership, because it's been at his helm of the waka that we've managed to get to this point here today. So for me, it's a very momentous day. I know I've talked a lot today, but I'll finish it with our council waiata. Ko wai makariri ki te raki e ko rakaia ki te tukare e wai ora e hora ke i te ora o ka ni ngā mana e ngā reo e te rangatira mā tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora. So we now need to put the resolution in front of us. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Wonderful. Absolutely. All those against? There's none. And all I can say is he hurahi ho, a new way. Tiha Moriora. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
O te pirika, o te taira whakata, te tikina, te tau, about yeah,
fantastic. What a momentous day. Thank you for all your involvement. We move forward in a wonderful direction. And we will now have to go to the next tab on the paper, which is tab 15, the policy on outdoor lighting. I believe Mr. Rikers is absent on sick leave today, so we have his stand-in.
All right, it's my pleasure to present on behalf of Mark Rikers the policy on outdoor sports lighting on council reserves. The policy was workshopped on the 21st of June 2023 at the Transport Infrastructure Committee meeting. Policy was then amended, and on the 18th of October 2023, the Transport Infrastructure Committee passed resolution recommending that the council adopts the policy. As a way of a refresh, the purpose of the policy is to provide guidance and direction on provision, management and decision-making for the outdoor sports lighting on council administrated reserves. The policy also defines a process for prioritisation of work programs for outdoor sports lighting. So this paper is procedural in nature, and it seeks council's approval and adoption of this policy.
Okay. I'll so move. This policy has already been to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. Because that committee, under its terms of reference, cannot actually adopt a policy, it's recommended that it went to council, and its recommendation was for council to adopt this particular policy. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hassan, for that point of clarification. It certainly does give us a level playing field, a level lighting level on playing field. Had to get one in? So I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Dean. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Now, councillors, we are going to move into public excluded. I'm just going to adjourn for a couple of minutes if anybody needs a restroom stop for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back in and have the resolution to move into public excluded. So we'll just break for 5 minutes. Welcome back, councillors. We're nearly to move into public excluded. Can I have a mover and a second to move into public excluded, please? Sophie and Deborah. Thank you. I mean, Nicole and Deborah. Sorry, Sophie, my apologies. Was the chocolate that did it? All those in favour, please say aye. Okay, right, thank you. Moved. We're now in public excluded. The first item is the confirmation of the minutes.
Can you just
Oh, yep.